from two-division Cage Warriors champion to corporate asset. This is the business of building Paddy Pimblett, the Baddy. The UFC did not sign a fighter, they acquired a UK market solution wearing 4-ounce gloves, when a phenom who conquered 2 weight classes needs 3 years to sniff the top 15. Something is rotten in matchmaking. This is not about a talent ceiling, it is about manufacturing a Scouse megastar while the real killers sit on the bench. Paddy is not an outlier athlete, he is a strategic buffer. The evidence is clear, his opponent list reads like a retirement home directory, and that Jared Gordon decision was daylight robbery. The UFC's UK market emergency is where this all starts. Michael Bisping retired in 2018. Darren Till lost 4 of 5 fights between 2018 and 2021. The promotion watched a multi-million-dollar market share evaporate in real time. They needed a Scouser savior. They needed him yesterday. Enter Paddy Pimblett, not as a fighter earning his spot, as a business solution parachuted into the lightweight division. The protection started the moment he signed that contract. The UFC was not building a contender, they were building a brand ambassador with a Liverpool accent and a reported 7-figure Barstool Sports deal. It was Barstool Sports' first exclusive sponsorship of any individual athlete. That is not speculation, that is the financial reality driving every matchmaking decision. And here's the thing about his opponent selection. It is not just safe, it is strategically sterilized. Luigi Vendramini was coming off a decision loss to Fares Ziam when they fed him to Paddy for his debut. Rodrigo Vargas was released from the UFC immediately after losing to him. Jordan Levitt is a mid-tier gatekeeper who specializes in grappling, not exactly the striking assassin you would need to expose Paddy's fundamental flaws. Notice the pattern? Not a single ranked striker in the bunch, not one knockout artist who could test that chin in the air defense. The UFC was not protecting him from losses. They were building a highlight reel against stylistic layups. Each opponent was handpicked to maximize Paddy's strengths while hiding his catastrophic defensive liabilities. The Las Vegas odds makers saw it before anyone else. While the public kept Paddy as a betting favorite based on charisma and Cage Warriors hype, the sharps were paying attention. The professional bettors who actually studied tape noticed the pattern. Line movement against Paddy was notable in at least 3 of his first 5 fights. Despite public money pushing his odds down, casual UK fans threw money at their Scouse hero. The people who do this for a living saw through the smoke. That is not coincidence. That is market manipulation through matchmaking. When the house wins both ways, you know the fix is not in the judge's hands, it is in the matchmaker's office. Then there is the pay-per-view placement strategy. This is where the protection gets sophisticated. Paddy was not headlining his own cards where a loss would be catastrophic. They put him on the Jones versus Miocic card, one of the biggest heavyweight fights in history. They put him on O'Malley versus Vera cards where his result was pure upside. If he wins, great, the UK market stays engaged. If he loses, it is buried in a stacked card and does not tank a main event. It is portfolio theory applied to fight promotion, diversify the risk, maximize the return on investment. The UFC treated Paddy like a volatile stock, high reward, but never let him become the portfolio itself. Now everyone points to Bobby Green at UFC 304 as proof the protection narrative is dead. Bobby Green was ranked, that matters. But let's be honest about what that fight actually was. Green is a 37-year-old hands-down boxer who invites grappling exchanges like a welcome mat. His defensive wrestling is suspect. His tendency to brawl in the pocket plays directly into Paddy's world-class submission game. The UFC did not feed him a top 15 killer. They fed him a veteran whose style is a perfect matchup for their protected asset. Beating Green does not prove Paddy can hang with the elite. It proves the matchmakers are geniuses at finding ranked opponents who still lose to his one elite skill. The real question is what comes next? Does Paddy get Arman Tsarukyan? Does he get Mateusz Gamrot? Or does he get another convenient style match? That is where the theory lives or dies. The Jared Gordon fight at UFC 282 was not just a bad decision. It was the glitch that exposed the entire protection algorithm. 23 out of 24 media members scored that fight for Gordon, 23-1. That is not a split decision. That is a consensus robbery confirmed by MMA decisions. But here's what makes it worse. Paddy's post-fight interview, where he said it wasn't even close, turned the hardcore fan base from skeptical to hostile. The protection works perfectly until the asset starts believing his own hype. When the protected fighter cannot acknowledge he got outworked, the system shows its cracks. Gordon landed cleaner shots. He controlled the clinch. He showed the world what happens when you give a competent veteran 3 rounds against the Golden Boy. The judges gave Paddy rounds he did not earn because the business needed him to stay shiny. That is not judging, that is asset management. After the robbery, Dana White did not admit his Golden Boy got outworked. He stood at that post-fight presser and blamed Gordon's horrible game plan. He said you can't leave it to the judges. That is not just deflection. That is protective public relations for a manufactured star. When have you ever seen Dana blame the victim of a bad decision instead of defending the integrity of the judging? Only when the brand is worth more than the belt. That press conference was not about honesty. It was about maintaining the asset's value. The technical death sentence becomes obvious when you study the tape. Paddy fights with his chin high, hands low, and pulls straight back in a straight line. Against the lightweight top 10, that is not a defensive flaw. That's fatal. Justin Gaethje would decapitate that style. Dustin Poirier would time that pullback and put him to sleep in under 2 minutes. The UFC knows this. They have seen the film. That is why the grappler-only filter was non-negotiable for 3 years. Every opponent was selected specifically because they could not exploit this gaping hole. Vendramini rocked him early. Gordon dropped him in the first round. Even Levitt had moments where he touched that chin. The hand-picked path was not about protecting his record. It was about protecting his brain from the type of knockout that ends careers and devalues assets. But it is not just the strikes he takes that threaten the investment. It is the lifestyle he leads between them. Paddy balloons to 206 pounds between camps. He has shown it off himself on YouTube. That is not just unprofessional. It is a business risk that limits fight frequency and increases medical withdrawal probability. Most lightweights walk around at 180 to 185 pounds. They cut to 155 pounds and can turn around in 3 months. Paddy needs 6 months to safely manage that 50-pound swing. The UFC gives him that luxury because the asset is worth more when it is properly maintained. But here is the problem. Every month between fights is a month the UK market is not being fed content. Keeping a star on the shelf is a sin in this business. The protection requires longer layoffs, and that creates its own revenue drag. It is a trap they built for themselves. The balloon and deflate cycle that keeps Paddy marketable is the same cycle that leaves him gasping in round 3. You cannot have the jolly Scouser content machine and the elite cardio. Pick one. The post-Paddy slump tells you everything about opponent selection. Vendramini got cut after losing to Paddy. Vargas got released. Gordon went on a record of 1 win and 3 losses after getting robbed. Jordan Levitt remains a mid-tier gatekeeper who cannot crack the rankings. Every opponent emerges worse while Paddy's brand stays shiny. This is not coincidence. It is protection by selection. The UFC feeds him fading assets and fighters on the verge of being cut. If Paddy wins, he cleans up the roster. If he loses to someone already on the way out, which minimizes the damage. Fighters who face Paddy do not get career boosts. They get career funerals. The sanitized path ensures his value rises while his opponent's value evaporates. Ranking stagnation is the smoking gun that proves this was not organic growth. 3 years in the UFC. No top 15 opponents until Bobby Green. Let that sink in while Alex Pereira gets an express lane from kickboxing debut to a title shot in just 371 days. And while Khamzat Chimaev fights 3 times in 6 weeks to force the issue, Paddy fought unranked veterans on the verge of retirement. The UFC rankings are not a meritocracy. They are a business tool. Paddy's stagnant position was a deliberate choice to delay exposure to the lightweight Shark Tank. They knew one stiff jab from Gaethje or Poirier would shatter the entire enterprise.